The Fire on Elk Street, Part 1, December 24th, 2013. The snow had been falling since morning, thick and wet, the kind that clung to boots and buried porches. Buffalo, New York, had seen heavier storms, but this one felt unusually quiet. The air was still. Streets were empty, cars tucked in under thick white coats. And on Elk Street, a narrow two-lane just west of downtown. The only sound that afternoon was the crunch of boots on salted steps and the occasional scrape of a shovel against pavement. Inside the small two-story house at 327 Elk Street, Deborah Langley, 38, stood at the stove stirring a pot of tomato soup. Her son, Josh, was 7, curled on the living room carpet under a fleece blanket with faded Ninja Turtles. He had a light cold, nothing serious, just a runny nose and sleepy eyes. School had closed 2 days early for the holiday. It was Christmas Eve. Deborah was a nurse assistant at Mercy Hospital. She was supposed to work a double shift that day, but after pleading with her supervisor, she got the evening off. It would be just the two of them, her and Josh. No big tree, no gifts under it yet, but they had soup, a movie lined up, and a shared peace that felt rare in their life. The house was old, built in 1919. Deborah rented it from a landlord she never met in person. Checks mailed, maintenance done late. The furnace groaned when it kicked in. The insulation was poor, but it was what she could afford, working nights, trying to raise her boy. Josh coughed from the living room. "You okay, baby?" she called. "Yeah," came his small voice. She walked in with the soup, sat beside him, and pulled the blanket up over both of them. "Want to pick the movie?" she asked. "Polar Express," he said without hesitation. Deborah smiled. "That again?" He grinned and nodded. She didn't mind. As the film started, she leaned back, her body heavy with exhaustion. It had been a long year, harder than most. Josh's father had left them in April. No calls, no child support, just vanished. She'd cried in silence for months, but never once in front of Josh. Around 7:15 p.m., as the final scene of the movie played and Josh drifted off beside her, Deborah smelled something odd, faint, almost metallic, like burning plastic. She sat up. The kitchen light was still on. The soup pot had been rinsed, nothing on the stove, but the smell was stronger now, acrid. Then she heard it, a soft, irregular clicking, like something sparking. She walked toward the back of the house, toward the laundry area. As she opened the hallway door, smoke curled upward from the baseboards, and then a flicker of orange along the ceiling. She froze. Her first instinct was denial, the kind of moment when your brain tries to explain it away. Maybe a light bulb blew, maybe it's steam. But it wasn't. Within seconds, the smoke thickened. The fire had already spread behind the wall. Probably electrical, she'd learn later. An old outlet in the laundry room. Years of neglected wiring. Deborah turned and ran. "Josh!" she yelled, coughing already. He was groggy, confused, standing halfway between the couch and the stairs. The room was filling with smoke now, coming down in waves from the ceiling like a slow, dark tide. "Upstairs!" she shouted. "Go, go, go!" He hesitated. He didn't understand. She grabbed him, lifted him, and bounded up the staircase 2 steps at a time, the way only a mother could, arms trembling, lungs already protesting. Upstairs, she flung open his bedroom door and dropped to her knees. The windows, she yanked at the lock and shoved it open. Cold air burst in like a punch. The snow-covered roof slanted away sharply. Below, the alley. She looked back at Josh, his eyes wide with fear, and whispered, "We're getting out. I promise." Downstairs, something cracked, a sharp, dry pop. The flames were coming. Part 2. The window. Outside the window, the snow on the rooftop looked soft. But Deborah knew better. It was ice. Brittle, deceptive. The drop to the alley below was at least 10 feet, maybe more, and Josh was barefoot, wearing only his pajamas. The wind whipped against them. Her hands were shaking. She pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders. "Josh," she said gently, kneeling in front of him, "I need you to trust me, okay?" He nodded, his eyes full of confusion. "I'm going out first. I'll be right below you. When I say go, you slide to me. Don't jump. Just slide." You started to cry, but she cupped his face. "I've got you, baby, I swear." She hoisted herself onto the windowsill and turned. Smoke was now pouring into the room, black and choking. The hallway behind them was lost in gray. She dropped. The roof was slick. Her feet shot out from under her, and she landed hard, sliding downward. She managed to spin herself, digging in with her hands and feet. Her fingers screamed from the cold. She reached the edge. The snowbank below wasn't deep, barely a cushion, but it was better than nothing. She lowered herself off the ledge and dropped, knees bending awkwardly on impact. Something snapped in her ankle. She cried out, but bit down on it. She stood. "Josh, now!" His face appeared in the window, wide-eyed. He didn't move. She waved frantically. "You can do it, baby. You're brave. Come to Mama." He swung one leg over the sill, shaking. Then the other. The snow hit his skin, and he whimpered. The smoke was billowing behind him now, like a shadow reaching out. "Slide! I've got you!" He did. He slid faster than she expected, his small body shooting down the slope. She lunged forward on her bad foot and caught him, barely. They tumbled into the snowbank, coughing, tangled. Then she heard it. The window above them cracked. A heartbeat later, flames erupted from the frame like something alive. The house was burning, fully now. Deborah grabbed Josh and limped toward the street, her breath coming in short, ragged bursts. They made it to the sidewalk just as the first fire engine roared onto Elk Street. Part 3. 17 minutes. It had taken 17 minutes from the first spark to full involvement. The fire department report later noted that the fire likely began around 7:12 p.m., behind the dryer unit in the rear of the house. Arcing wires. No smoke detectors on the first floor. No functioning ones anyway. At 7:25 p.m., the call came in. A neighbor across the alley saw flames through the window. By 7:28, 3 engines were on the scene. But it was too late for the structure. Firefighters stormed in with hoses and axes. The roof collapsed at 7:42. Deborah and Josh were wrapped in wool blankets and placed in the back of an ambulance, more for warmth than treatment. Neither had serious burns, but Deborah's ankle was fractured. Her palms were raw, her lungs irritated from smoke. "Did we lose everything?" she asked quietly. The EMT paused. "Yeah, but you're both alive." She nodded, dazed. Josh had fallen asleep against her, one tiny hand still clutching her sleeve. Part 4. The morning after. Christmas morning dawned gray. Deborah stood on the curb with a pair of borrowed crutches, watching steam rise from the rubble. The house was gone, a blackened shell, nothing to recover. Josh was inside a neighbor's home, asleep again. Deborah didn't cry, not Ben. The Red Cross gave them a voucher. The fire department took their statement. A woman from Channel 7 asked if she wanted to go on camera. Deborah declined. What could she say? She saved her son. That was the whole story. But what she didn't say, what burned deeper than smoke ever could, was the guilt, the doubt. What if she'd reacted slower? What if the window hadn't opened? What if he hesitated just 1 second longer? These thoughts would come back again and again in the weeks that followed. But that morning, standing in the snow, she felt only one thing: gratitude. Part 5. Aftermath. The Langley family, which now meant just Deborah and Josh, moved into a motel on South Park Avenue, courtesy of an emergency relief voucher. Room 212 had a mini-fridge, 2 beds, and a flickering fluorescent light in the bathroom. It wasn't home, but it was warm. Deborah's phone rang non-stop those first few days. The hospital asked when she could return. Insurance adjusters wanted paperwork she no longer had. Social workers checked on Josh. Neighbors offered clothes. A local church brought by a small Christmas tree with 1 red ornament on top. Deborah said thank you again and again. She smiled again and again. But inside, something had shifted. She couldn't sleep. At night, she'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring out the window while Josh dreamed beside her. In her mind, she saw the fire over and over, the hallway filling with black, the sound of wood splitting, the flash of orange at his window. That moment, when she wasn't sure she'd catch him, that's the one that kept returning. Her ankle healed slowly. She refused pain meds. "I need to be clear," she told her doctor. "I'm all he's got." Part 6. Media and Memory. 3 days after the fire, a local reporter named Alicia Monroe left a note at the motel desk. It read, "We've heard what you did. I think people should hear it too, not for the drama, but for the truth. Mothers like you never get thanked enough. Please consider talking to me. No pressure." At first, Deborah threw the note away, but something about it stayed with her. A week later, she called Alicia. They met in the motel lobby. No cameras, just a notepad and a small recorder. Deborah told her everything, slowly, carefully. Not to be heroic, she didn't feel like one. She told it because maybe, just maybe, it would help someone else think faster. Act faster, not ignore that smell in the air. The story aired the next night on Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Under the headline, "She Carried Him Through Fire, a Mother's Fight to Save Her Son on Elk Street." That night, Deborah received over 80 messages from strangers. Some sent winter clothes. Others offered furniture. One woman mailed a hand-knitted scarf with a note that read, "You reminded me of my own mother." She would have done the same. Part 7. The New Apartment. In mid-January, a small apartment became available in Lackawanna, just south of the city. A second-floor walk-up with beige carpeting and a view of the train yard. It wasn't much, but it was clean and quiet. Josh loved the bunk bed, even though he had no sibling to share it with. He picked the top anyway and hung a flashlight from the rail like a tiny lantern. Deborah returned to work part-time. The first night she left Josh alone again. Even for just a few hours, she panicked. She texted him 5 times in 1 hour. She sat in the locker room, hand trembling over her phone, willing herself not to leave her shift early. When she came home and found him fast asleep with the flashlight still on, she cried. In silence, in relief. She never told him why. Part 8. The Memory Box. In February, Josh brought home an assignment from school. Tell the story of your strongest memory. He drew a crayon picture of a burning house, a stick-figure woman on the roof, a smaller one sliding toward her, bright orange flames, blue snow. When Deborah saw it, her breath caught in her throat. "I didn't make it scary," he said, "because you were there." She hugged him tightly. Her arms lingered a second longer than usual. That night, she started a shoebox. Inside, she placed the scarf from the stranger, a Polaroid of the motel Christmas tree, a hospital bracelet from her fractured ankle, and Josh's drawing. She labeled the lid with a Sharpie. Elk Street, 2013, we made it. Part 9, back to Elk Street. By spring, the snow had melted from the sidewalks, and Elk Street had returned to its usual rhythm. Kids on bikes, the clatter of garbage cans, the faint hum of life. Deborah hadn't been back. Not once. But on April 17th, 4 months to the day since the fire, she drove past the lot. The house was gone, bulldozed in late January. All that remained was a rectangle of scorched ground, half covered in gravel. A plastic sign from the city read, "Unsafe structure removed, pending use review." She sat in her car across the street for a long time. Josh was at school. She was alone. The engine ticked as it cooled. Wind nudged the car gently. Then she got out. The ground where the stairs used to be was uneven, laced with dandelions. She stepped over them, limping slightly. Her ankles still swelled on cold days. She stood where the kitchen once was, where the couch had been, where the window broke. And for a moment, the silence screamed louder than fire ever had. She took a folded piece of paper from her jacket and knelt. She read the letter to no one, or maybe to the house, or to the part of herself she'd left behind here. Dear Josh, one day you'll forget how close it came. That's good, but I won't. I will remember every second. The smoke, the cold, the fear, and your face in that window. I will remember it, because it made me certain of one thing, that I would burn before I let this world take you. And we are still here. Love, Mom. She placed the letter in the soil and covered it with a flat stone. Then she stood and walked back to the car. Part 10. What's left? People often ask what they lost in the fire. Clothes, photos, Josh's first birthday card, a silver ring Deborah's grandmother gave her, her nursing books, his baby blanket, all gone. But what they saved, what they carried, was more invisible and more permanent. The knowledge that instinct matters, that 1 second can make all the difference. That courage, when called, doesn't arrive with trumpets. It comes quietly, on shaking knees, with burning hands, through smoke. And sometimes courage smells like soup on Christmas Eve. Epilogue. To the listeners. If you're hearing this, look around your house tonight. Check the smoke alarms. Replace that outlet you've been meaning to. Teach your child how to unlock the window. And remember, love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the run. Sometimes it's in the fall. And sometimes it's in a mother's voice, whispering through fire, "I've got you, baby." If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment, a like, or a message. Not for numbers, but because someone out there needs to hear this. And maybe it'll help them move faster. Maybe it'll save a life. Subscribe for more true stories that matter, because the quiet heroes deserve to be heard. Part 11. What she didn't say. 2 weeks after the fire, Deborah sat in a small beige room at the South Buffalo Counseling Center. The walls were covered in calming blue prints. A tissue box sat slightly off-center on the table. Across from her, a middle-aged therapist named Carla adjusted her glasses and said gently, "It's okay to not feel heroic." Deborah hadn't wanted to come, but one of the Red Cross workers had strongly recommended it. Said it was routine. Said trauma doesn't always show itself in flames. "I didn't think," Deborah said. "I just moved, and that's what saved him. But I can't stop thinking, what if I hadn't? What if the door was jammed? What if I froze?" Carla didn't interrupt. She waited. Deborah looked down. "I didn't feel brave. I felt angry. Angry at the house, at the landlord, at the wiring, at myself." Carla nodded. And you survived, with him. That anger, that's survival too. It wasn't a breakthrough moment. No single tear changed her life. But when Deborah left that day, she felt 5% lighter. And sometimes, 5% is everything. Part 12. Josh at School. In March, Josh's teacher, Miss Callahan, invited Deborah to parent-teacher night. The walls of the classroom were bright with posters and finger paintings. In the corner, a bulletin board displayed essays titled, "Someone Who Is My Hero." Josh's paper was there, crooked, glued slightly off-center, a drawing of a woman with wild hair pulling a smaller figure from fire. Underneath, in barely legible print, "My mom is my hero because she caught me when the house was burning and she didn't cry, even though her foot was broken." Deborah didn't read the rest. She couldn't. Not then. She stood in silence, the murmurs of other parents fading behind her. Later that night, she asked Josh why he didn't mention it before. He shrugged. It was just true. Part 13. From the Ashes. In October, a local artist invited families impacted by fire to create a community mural. Josh painted a red door. "I miss the old one," he said, even though it was squeaky. Deborah didn't argue. Some things didn't need fixing. They just needed to be remembered. The mural, later displayed at the county library, had dozens of squares. Flowers, flames, empty rooms, full hearts. Josh's door was right in the center. Deborah added a small inscription beneath it. Dec 24th, 2013. Out of fire came light. Part 14. 10 years later. 2023. Josh was 17 now. Tall, quiet like his mother. His hair curled at the edges, and he always wore two mismatched socks, one red, one gray. He said it was lucky. One Sunday afternoon, Deborah came home to find a note taped to her mirror. It was his college essay. "The moment that made me who I am was the night I almost didn't make it. I don't remember the fire as much as I remember the sound of her voice. I remember her saying, 'I've got you.' And I knew I was safe. I want to study fire science and become a responder. Because some people run out and some run in. And I think I want to be the second kind." Deborah read it twice, then again, then sat down slowly on the edge of her bed. Outside, the snow had just begun to fall. Part 15. The Second Christmas. The next Christmas, 2014, was quiet. No tree, but there was music. No gifts, but there was laughter. Deborah made soup again. Josh picked the movie. "Polar Express?" she asked. He shook his head. "Let's try something new." They watched in silence, curled beneath a blanket that smelled faintly of peppermint and clean laundry. Somewhere in the middle, he rested his head on her shoulder and said nothing. Because some stories don't need retelling. They're still burning, soft, warm, somewhere inside us.